Eldridge K writes in and says to me, Dan, I came across a website from the 1990s, one of those old websites that had your name listed as being a participant at a thing called Ball's Cabaret in Minneapolis. Since I know that you lived in Minneapolis, that you, the Dan Schneider from Cosmoetica, who was performing at that cabaret? Well, yes, it was me. Ball's Cabaret was a cabaret started by this local singer named Leslie Ball back in 1991, and it was a free show, or you'd have to give a contribution of $5 to go in, um, but people who didn't have the money could go in. Leslie Ball was a recovering alcoholic. She had her biggest claim to fame was a few indie albums that she had released in Minnesota that I guess got a little bit of airplay. Um, she had uh, she had been, from what people had said, and she had sort of confirmed that she had once dated Elvis Costello. I guess that's her biggest claim to fame as far as like her personal life. But she was an ex-teacher who came back to Minneapolis after I think growing up in Duluth, and she had been an alcoholic, and so she was against alcoholism and drug use and whatnot. So anyone who came to Balls to perform uh, was barred from performing if they were on drugs or drinking. Anyway, she was a very nice woman, and after each show, we would go to a place called Pizza Luce for pizza. And I got to know a lot of the people there over the 3 to 4 years that I performed there, from like '96 through the end of '99 or so to early 2000. I stopped going because when I met Jessica, she didn't want to go out late at night, and a few times I had to cancel. But I thoroughly enjoyed the show and the atmosphere there. They were good, solid people. Um, I tried to always read my poems and put it in a great light, and I had great response from the people there. Leslie Ball, unfortunately, always had me go first when there were the fewest people in there because she didn't think much of poetry, and so that was one of the reasons too that I was sort of getting a little bit disaffected from Balls. But I met some really cool people. Colleen Cruz, a local comic, worked or performed there. Ari Hopman, a great comic, performed there, and a number of other people. There was a rival cabaret called Patrick's Cabaret, but that was a guy who was a gay dancer who had AIDS and HIV, and it was more of a place where they were trying to make money. It wasn't for money's sake like Ball's was, and so there was always this rivalry between Patrick's Cabaret and Ball's Cabaret, even though some of the same people performed there. Someone like Heidi Arneson, who was sort of like a lesser version of Karen Finley in terms of notoriety, although she was a much better artist than Karen Finley. Um, but the Balls Cabaret people and the Patrick's Cabaret people had this sort of rivalry. I never performed at Patrick's Cabaret, although I went there maybe half a dozen to a dozen times versus the maybe 60 times that I performed at Balls. As I stated, Leslie Ball ran it. A few years ago, I read that she had gotten cancer but had recovered, which made me happy. She was a very nice person, but she bordered on the PC, and intellectually, she had some issues there. For example, I still remember the 4th of July, 1998, I believe it was. There was someone had come in. This was about 11:30, about a half hour before the show was to begin, and before most of the customers had gotten there. Someone ran into the theater as I was talking with Leslie and someone else. I think Ari Hoffman and maybe a handful of other people. Ben Bakken was a kid who did a comedy routine with Ari. He was there, and they said that there was some black guys outside that were trying to kill each other with broken bottles. Well, we all ran outside. Leslie first. She ran across the street. There was an Ethiopian restaurant. It turned out there were two gangs of Ethiopians, Eritreans, that were fighting. So here comes Leslie Ball, this naive liberal white woman, running across the street to try to stop them. She gets in between them and says, "You must love each other. You must love each other." I'm looking as Leslie's running across the street towards these guys who are either going to pull out guns or knives. One guy breaks a beer bottle, and wants to stab the other guy. Leslie comes running across. All the other people at Balls are there not doing anything. So being Mr. Hero myself, I decide, well, I guess it's up to me to save Leslie Ball. So I ran right after her. She gets over there. The black guy, one of the black guys, I forget whether it was the Ethiopian or Eritrean, starts yelling, at Leslie, shut up, shut up. When I get there, he's saying, "Take your bitch back." I said to him, "She's not my bitch." I picked Leslie Ball up by my one arm, threw her over my her back across the street. And I told her, Leslie, don't go there. The cops, someone had called the cops, whether some of the balls people or whatnot, as the sirens were being heard, all the Eritreans and Ethiopians dispersed. And I told her, Leslie, these guys have been killing each other since before there were white people on this planet. You are not going to stop them from killing each other. All the you must love, you must not use violence talk is not going to work on them. She almost got herself killed. I saved her life. And Leslie was angry at me for the rest of that night for saving her life because that the guy was ready to take the broken bottle and stick it in her or me. And I got us the hell out of there. So that was one of the famous Leslie Ball incidents. Another one that happened at Ball's was there was this local DJ, a black guy, who was working for an all-black radio station there, and he was someone who was involved with the Loft, this bad writing group that was involved in Minneapolis, and he was a known drunk and drug taker, and he came in high one day or one night. He was scheduled to perform, and Leslie told him she wasn't going to allow him on stage in his inebriated state. Well, he got angry. This was, again, was about 25, 30 minutes before the show, so it was only Leslie, me, and maybe Ari Hoffman and one or two other people. He got real angry and whatnot and started making a scene, and he looked like he was going to go after Leslie, and I, again, had to intercede, and I sort of came up from behind, put him in a headlock, and wrestled him to the floor, and then, got him in an armbar and threw him out the door and locked the door and told them to call the cops. Now, Leslie was not as angry at me this time because I think she was more directly scared of this guy who she had known. I won't give his name, but it was an incident that one of the two incidents, those two, the Eritrean incident and the drug taking guy incident, that Leslie showed that she, while a nice person, sometimes didn't make wise choices in how she behaved in public. And then there's the final time. About a year or so after I stopped going to balls, there was a Yoko Ono exhibit at, I think it was the Walker Museum in Minneapolis. And Ono she's one of these great prank artists, gimmick artists. And two of her pieces were she'd take a bite into an apple and let it rot on just a stand. And then she had a piece of paper that she just made a small dot in the center. And as my wife and I were snickering and laughing at this crap, we saw Leslie there and said, hi. And I said, boy, a dot on a piece of paper. How profound. And Leslie inhaled, sighed, and said, yes, she was so ahead of her time. And I said to her, Leslie, I was being facetious. This is crap. This isn't real art. And so Leslie looked at me wide-eyed and goes, oh. So as I say, Leslie Ball was a very sweet woman, a nice woman. Ball's Cabaret is a great place. But Leslie wasn't exactly what you would call an intellectual. So those are some of my memories of Ball's Cabaret. I did, the Omniversica radio show actually came out of Ball's Cabaret as a fellow named Dave Wesley, who used to be the engineer who helped produce the Ball's shows and did the lighting and the music, had started this website, Sursum Corda, and because he knew me from there and he saw how dynamic I was and how I affected a lot of people, he asked me if I wanted to do a show for his website. This was internet radio before YouTube. I then recruited Art Durkee, and we did a dozen shows over the course of a year. And now it looks prescient, but it's all because of Ball's Cabaret. So yes, that was me. I was the Dan Schneider at Ball's Cabaret. So thanks for listening, and thanks for asking the question.